Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Metrobank Foundation Fellowship in Public Service Conversations. The online lecture will start in 10 minutes. For the meantime, may we ask you to please check the link of the feedback form pinned on the comment section of your screen for Facebook and chat box for the Zoom participants. Your feedback is important for us as it will help the moderators assist and improve the next FPS program design in the future. Also, as you listen to the two lectures later, we encourage you to please type your questions in the Q&A chat box for the Zoom participants. For those watching through Facebook Live, you may type your questions in the comment section. We'd also like to acknowledge the presence of the following valued guests. We'd like to acknowledge Ms. Helen Orande, Executive Director of the League of Corporate Foundations, Ms. Maria Rosarita Soco, Executive Director of PHAP Cares Foundation, Ms. Veronica Gabaldon, Executive Director of the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation Incorporated, Director Bernardo Alejandro, Office of Civil Defense, Major General Edgardo De Leon, Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, J3 Armed Forces of the Philippines, Ms. Elizabeth Zavala, Secretary General of the Philippine Red Cross, Attorney Maria Antoinette Velasco Allones, COO of the Tourism Promotions Board, Vice Admiral Lyndon Latorre, Deputy Commandant for Administration of the Philippine Coast Guard, and Police Brigadier General Bong Cabillan of the Director for Logistics of the Philippine National Police.
A generous heart is a great equalizer. When a heart cares, serves, and transforms, it can help improve people's lives and grow communities. Generosity is at the heart of what we do at Metrobank Foundation. Our founder himself is a generous man. He had said, "I make money, so I give money back." Since day one, Dr. George SKT has been guided by the belief that wealth, once made, is meant to be shared. He saw many opportunities to make things better for the Filipinos. All it would take, he said, is heart. Thus, Metrobank Foundation has been envisioned to be the country's premier corporate philanthropic organization that contributes a significant impact on social development. To do our work well, we rely on our roadmap: excel, engage, empower. We aim to uplift individuals and link up with like-minded institutions for a shared purpose. We also aspire to propagate a culture of excellence and provide solutions to the needs of our stakeholders. Through the Metrobank Foundation Outstanding Filipinos, exemplary teachers, soldiers, and police officers are recognized for rendering service above and beyond their call of duty.
We could not discount the importance of heart in public service. Being a soldier, your capital is your life. You should not hesitate. You should not have a second thought in the performance of your duty, because soldiery is more than a profession. You are laying down your life.
The heart is actually the core of our public service. The heart teaches us to unselfishly give service to the people whom we are committed to protect and to serve. It is a sense of satisfaction when you are able to use your heart and see people smile and having fun because of what you did.
Here in the Philippines, there are a lot of people who are marginalized and underserved. We have a lot of opportunities to work for them. So I think when you say heart in public service, it's really knowing who you work for, and at the end of the day, you know you serve these people.
The annual Metrobank Art and Design Excellence hails the creativity of the Filipino through the annual competitions in painting and sculpture.
Yeah, heart is actually passion, more on passion of doing the artwork. My passion of creating works that will touch the society, heal the society. That's for me is having a heart. Having heart in whatever it is you're doing will fuel that creativity. I'm fortunate enough to work with students and teachers who are already creative in their own right. The output is a manifestation of the creativity, wherein if they put a little bit of time and effort to that, plus that heart, will make an outstanding art piece.
The Metrobank MTAP DepEd Math Challenge is our way of helping students become competitive in mathematics.
As a student and a mathlete, it is perseverance and passion that make me excel. Perseverance is actually hard work and discipline. On the other hand, passion is the drive to pursue something in spite of difficulties and failures, and the will to stick to it in the long term.
We provide financial assistance to underprivileged but academically deserving students.
Holding on to the principles of honor and excellence, because excellence is nothing without honor, and honor is important because not only are we scholars of the university, but we are scholars of the entire country. Therefore, it is our responsibility that we have to not only be a part of, but to contribute to the community that we are in.
We encourage different sectors of society to pay tribute to the teaching profession through the National Teachers Month. We work with like-minded organizations whose programs are aligned with our health, education, arts, and livelihood thrusts towards the attainment of sustainable development goals.
I think heart is the beginning of any creative endeavor. It allows you to be empathetic, sympathetic. It allows you to be compassionate. It's the current that actually helps you translate something intangible into something tangible, which is an artwork.
Heart, really, when we are dealing with people, we have to deal with empathy. It's not enough that if we wanted social upliftment, it's not enough that we give money or material things. They have to feel that they are part of this.
It is essentially what separates social work, social development work, from the regular development work. You deal with people, you deal with their hopes, their dreams, and you try to find out their strength and build on that so that eventually they could be self-reliant, and that's very important in sustainability.
Calzada Coffee champions Philippine specialty coffee. We wanted to be the calzada, or the road from farm to cup, and bridge the coffee farmers to the market. We basically wanted to put Philippine coffee back into the international market, not just in terms of volume, but also in terms of quality. It's very important to be able to understand the needs of the people we support. And we can only hear them if we use the heart. It's not only listening through the ears, but more importantly, through the heart.
Through our grants program, we help raise the quality of life of the poorest, most vulnerable, and underserved sectors of society. We aid survivors of natural calamities in the Philippines and Asia through relief and rehabilitation efforts. Serving as our healthcare arm is the Manila Doctors Hospital, offering social services to indigents and health interventions in adopted communities.
The work that we do has limitations in itself, but when we harness and maximize generosity, it can play a huge role in meeting the needs of society. By generosity, we don't mean only monetarily, but also the heart to share time, talent, and skill. Only then can we equal the kind of heart that contributes to the greatness of our country.
To be a leader in philanthropy may come naturally to Metrobank Foundation. But the bigger vision is to be the soul of philanthropy in the country. That is where our heart truly lies.
History offers the best examples of outstanding service. Men and women who remind us of patriotism, courage, integrity, and social responsibility. These are the same qualities that we like to honor among today's teachers, soldiers, and police officers. They are a testament to the culture of excellence that Metrobank Group founder Dr. George S.K.T. has always envisioned for our country. He believes that putting a premium on achievement sets a high standard in service crucial to nation building. The Metrobank Foundation Outstanding Filipinos is an awards program which has recognized hundreds of teachers, soldiers, and police officers for their exceptional work in their chosen field. The award values the abilities and potentials of people to excel and bring about change in the country. The task of nation building has become challenging. Outstanding Filipinos are expected to render service above and beyond the call of duty. To be outstanding means to go beyond excellence, to transform lives, make a difference, inspire others. The Metrobank Foundation Outstanding Filipinos, now the country's most coveted professional service award. A fitting tribute to selflessness, integrity, courage, and social responsibility. Metrobank Foundation Outstanding Filipinos, beyond excellence.
Welcome to the Metrobank Foundation Fellowship in Public Service, Conversations and Conferment Ceremony. To start the program, please bow your heads for the prayer and stand up as we sing the Philippine National Anthem.
Dear Almighty and ever-loving God, we glorify and thank your name. You have showered us with so much blessings, and your presence continuously remind us of your faithfulness and guidance. Father, continue to heal our land, heal our people, strengthen our hearts and our minds, and in the midst of turmoil, give us hope and peace. May we humbly ask you to shower our Metrobank Foundation outstanding Filipinos and speakers today of your greatest inspiration, so that they may share the most of their knowledge, heart and soul to the respective topics. May all the participants also absorb the invaluable knowledge and experience and put it into practice what they may learn today. May all of us be a living witnesses of your genuine love through the enactment of the knowledge acquired through this Metrobank Foundation Fellowship in Public Service Conversations. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Sa
Pleasant morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Reg Baticalan, Program Officer of the Excellence. I will the President of the Metro Bank Foundation, Mr. Aniceto Sobrepeña, to deliver his welcome remarks.
Good day. It is with much pleasure that I welcome you all to the very first Metrobank Foundation Fellowship in Public Service Conversations. Prior to the pandemic, Metrobank Foundation conducts a convocation to confer on our outstanding Filipino awardees the title Fellows in Public Service. Thereafter, they deliver their lectures where they share their best practices and pursue their advocacies. In light of the new normal, we are proceeding with our tradition with a slightly different format. And we have called this online event the FPS Conversations. We convene today at the most propitious time. 3 days ago, celebrities and politicians made a call to save the planet during the Countdown Global Launch 2020. There is indeed a growing movement which aims at mobilizing and unifying people to address squarely the climate crisis. In yesterday's news feeds, we read about the statement of Environment Secretary Roy Cimatu that a climate emergency may be declared by the administration to require a whole nation approach in addressing the negative impact of climate change on the environment and the economy. We are here today to talk about disaster management. Calamities are not new to the Philippines, but when disasters happen unexpectedly, it can be overwhelming. Besides natural cataclysms, the country has had our share of man-made catastrophes. While some of these are unavoidable, measures can be taken to manage the impact and mitigate the adverse effects upon the affected population. We have two resource persons today. One of them, Dr. Carla Dimalanta, will help us appreciate the critical role of exploring geophysics and understand what lies beneath the Earth's surface. She will share the importance and use of geophysical methods in the assessment of geohazards for disaster management. Our other speaker is Lieutenant Colonel John Paul Baldomar from the Philippine Army. He will share with us the important role of the military during humanitarian emergencies. What we aim to do is raise the awareness of technological advancement as well as share knowledge acquired from years of experience and study which contribute to the prevention and reduction of detrimental effects of disasters and calamities. We also hope to better appreciate the efforts for an efficient and timely delivery of humanitarian assistance to affected communities. Our activity this morning brings the program of the Metrobank Foundation Outstanding Filipinos to a whole new platform. It was part of a vision 2 years ago to harness the wealth of experience and expertise of our awardees to benefit society at large. Their lives and accomplishments also serve to inspire others to replicate or even surpass these outstanding achievements. We believe that accomplishments resulting in positive change and innovations that address major social concerns should be highlighted and shared widely. This is why the Metrobank Foundation decided to provide an avenue for these stories to be heard, in the hope that others will be inspired and seek to replicate or even surpass these outstanding achievements. Today, we are likewise pleased to confer on our distinguished awardees the title of Fellows in Public Service. This fellowship in public service accords both honor and responsibility upon the conferee. It is an honor that provides opportunities to extend leadership and widen their influence in their respective sectors. It is also as much a responsibility, as they are continuously challenged to pursue more meaningful contributions to our society. To date, our program has successfully implemented 13 joint and individual lectures and 2 roundtable discussions, and gathered around 2,027 participants composed of teachers, professors, students, soldiers, police officers, and local chief executives, key government officials from various parts of the country. While the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic shifted our direction to crisis response mode since March of this year, Metrobank Foundation has made the necessary adjustments. We are now ready to continue the Metrobank Foundation Fellowship in Public Service by utilizing various digital platforms in order to reach out to a wider audience than we originally conceived. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope to encourage dialogue across sectors and bring innovations, initiatives, and advocacies of these exemplary individuals so that they can further develop into future policies, strategies, systems, and even curriculum. Thank you, Dr. Carla Dimalanta and Lieutenant Colonel John Paul Baldomar, for your dedication to service beyond excellence. Congratulations and mabuhay. And to all of you who are with us today, thank you for being part of this inaugural FPS Conversations. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Sobrepeña. Now, to give us a background about our first speaker, let's all watch this vignette about Dr. Carla Dimalanta.
I'm not a teacher only. I'm a teacher, I'm a researcher, I'm a mentor, I have an admin position, I do public service, may mga international collaborations kami na tingin ko nakakatulong sa profession namin sa geology to popularize the geology of the Philippines. So yung ginagawa ko na mini-mentor yung mga students, sila ngayon ginagawa nila yon. They have their own group of students that they teach. Kasama ko silang nagre-research. What makes me an outstanding Filipino is because the traditional definition of a teacher has evolved. And I think I embody that, the different roles that a teacher in this day plays.
At this juncture, we shall now confer the Metrobank Foundation Fellow in Public Service title to Dr. Carla Dimalanta. Allow me to read the citation. Metrobank Foundation confers the Metrobank Foundation Fellow in Public Service to Dr. Carla Dimalanta, DSC, Professor 10, University of the Philippines, Diliman. As 2018 Metrobank Foundation Outstanding Filipino, recognized for her outstanding contributions to the field of geophysics. Her groundbreaking researches provide concrete solutions to prepare for and mitigate the devastating effects of climate change and disasters in the country. Given this 13th of October, 2020 at the Metrobank Plaza, Makati City. And so, without further ado, may I now call on Dr. Carla Dimalanta, 2018 Metrobank Foundation Outstanding Filipino Awardee, President of the Geological Society of the Philippines, and Assistant Vice President for Academic Affairs of the University of the Philippines, for her talk entitled Looking Without Seeing, Geophysics in Disaster Management and Resource Exploration.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So I'm here to talk to you about geophysics and how it is a valuable tool that is used in the search for various resources and also in the identification of potential hazards which may lead to disastrous events. How many of you have heard of water witches and the divining rod? Well, centuries ago, this was how people looked for water or metals and ores. So these water witches or dowsers that we call them usually walked with a forked twig in their hands. And when the end of that stick pointed downward or turned and twisted, then that supposedly indicated where the water or ore may be found. But geophysics has now provided us with a more scientific approach in the search for water, mineral deposits, and other features beneath the Earth's surface. However, people should not think that geophysical equipment are like metal detectors, which beep to indicate that you have found the feature that you're looking for. So the science behind looking for features beneath the Earth's surface is not as simple as that. I'm sure some of you have seen these equations previously. These are laws and principles of physics that you learned in your physics classes when you were in high school or when you were in college. So the application of these laws and principles provide us with information that is very crucial for our understanding of the Earth's structure, composition, and processes. How are we able to do this? Well, the Earth is not a homogeneous Earth. It's not made up of the same materials everywhere. So the different materials that are found on the Earth's surface, those that lie beneath the Earth's surface, in the crust, down to the mantle, and all the way to the core, are characterized by different physical properties, such as density, magnetic properties, electrical properties, and elastic properties. So for example, we can see here that the density of the crust is different from the density of the mantle, which is different from the density of the core. At the Earth's surface, if we look at igneous rocks, these generally have higher magnetic properties compared to sedimentary rocks. So these different physical properties that characterize materials comprising the Earth produce changes in the Earth's magnetic field, the Earth's gravitational field. They affect the velocities of seismic waves and even the electrical responses of materials. And all of these things may be detected or measured by various geophysical equipment. So at the National Institute of Geological Sciences, through the support provided by the Department of Science and Technology, we have been able to carry out various research projects which allowed us to acquire different geophysical equipment. So this different geophysical equipment that you see in these photos have been used in order to look for underground water, to determine if faults are present in the subsurface, and or to detect possible sinkholes or cavities in some areas. So measurements recorded by various geophysical equipment are processed and carefully transformed by geophysicists into maps that look like this. So the colors that you see here depict the different physical properties detected by geophysical equipment, which results or which produce changes in various fields that are measured. And it is now the task of the geophysicist to come up with an interpretation of this geophysical data, because the objective is to try to come up with a picture of what the subsurface could probably look like. So for this example that we have, this is for work that we did in Central Cebu. We came up with this interpretation. we identified the possible layers, we identified the possible rock types, and the physical properties that produce these geophysical measurements that were detected at the surface. So, geophysics is very important and has proven to be a valuable tool in the search for various resources. So whether these are mineral deposits, energy, or groundwater resources, we have to rely on geophysical methods to look for these features. But as I mentioned earlier, it's not like you are working with a metal detector that tells you immediately if you have found whatever it is that you're trying to look for. So the search for ores, water, energy resources is like detective work where you try to look for and identify features that will point you in the direction of whatever feature you want to find. So for example, if you're looking for a gold deposit, you don't look for the gold itself. Instead, you look at your geophysical data and try to see if there are indications there that quartz veins are present because quartz is associated with gold, or you try to infer from the geophysical data if there are any information pertaining to the rocks where the gold deposit may be hosted, or you try to see if the geophysical data will give you any indications of the presence of faults or fractures because this may have served as pathways for ore-bearing fluids. So aside from the use of geophysical methods for resource exploration, these techniques have also proven valuable in the identification of possible unseen geohazards. So geophysics provides us with the means of detecting subsurface features such as cavities, sinkholes, faults, and this may pose hazards to communities or populated areas. So I'm sure you have seen or heard news about sinkholes, for example, in Cebu Island. So these are typical or common for areas in Cebu, especially those that are underlain by limestone. So when rainwater seeps into the ground, that water goes through spaces and cracks within the limestone, slowly dissolving the limestone to create voids and cavities. And sometimes these subsurface cavities reach a point where they are no longer able to support the materials above the ground, thereby causing this ground to collapse. So it's very useful to carry out geophysical surveys, such as a ground penetrating radar survey. So the data generated from such a survey will provide geophysicists with clues of the potential features that you're looking for. So for example, in this particular work, this feature that we see on this section is interpreted to correspond to a possible sinkhole. This is work that we did in Northern Cebu for one of our DOST-funded projects. So the survey was carried out because we wanted to investigate if there are faults or fractures that may be present in the subsurface. So after the data is acquired, the data is carefully processed in order to come up with an image such as this. So this image allows the geophysicist to interpret if possible faults are present in the subsurface. So here, this black dashed line corresponds to the fault that we're trying to detect. So the next step is to determine if this is an active fault. The reason for this is because active faults are capable of triggering earthquakes. So we want to know if such features are present in the subsurface. So the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology has mapped active faults in different parts of the country and has come up with an app, the Fault Finder app, to make communities aware of where these features may be found and to make communities aware if their areas are vulnerable to potential hazards in case any of these faults move. Some geophysical methods even provide us with with features of submarine, with pictures of submarine features. So this, for example, is work done by a young colleague at the Institute. So Leo acquired this geophysical data from the Manila Trench region. So You only see these lines and these wiggly lines, but these are things that are interpreted by geophysicists to come up with an interpretation that looks like this. So this is what the picture of the subsurface looks like, and it tells us the possible presence of faults. So these red broken lines here. It also tells us, interestingly, of the presence of possible debris deposits. And these debris deposits are believed to have been due to a submarine landslide. So this is something that we have to take note of, because if a big submarine landslide happens, then it may trigger a tsunami. If any of these possible faults is an active fault, then it triggers an earthquake, then that too may trigger a tsunami. So these are interesting results from the Manila Trench region, and this is something again that we have to carefully consider, because researchers have recently reported finding tsunami deposits in this Dongdao Island. These tsunami deposits were believed to have been transported by tsunamis from an earthquake that was triggered along the Manila Trench. So seismologists, geophysicists, and other scientists have been investigating the Manila Trench area, and models indicate that it is capable of triggering a big magnitude earthquake, so magnitude greater than 6.4. Why are we concerned about a big magnitude earthquake? Well, some of you may have witnessed the December 26, 2004 Great Indian Ocean Earthquake, or the Banda Aceh earthquake. So this earthquake with a magnitude of 9.1 triggered 30-meter high tsunamis that devastated Indonesia, Thailand, Myanmar, India, and the tsunamis even reached the South African coast almost 11 hours after the earthquake struck. This devastating event claimed more than 220,000 lives in more than 10 countries. Thus, investigations of the Manila Trench are very important, especially those that use geophysical methods. The data generated from such studies will provide us with a better understanding of the potential hazards such as tsunamis and earthquakes, which may be related to the Manila Trench. So, from these few examples that I have shown here, we can clearly see how geophysics is a valuable discipline that helps us look for various mineral, energy, or groundwater resources. Equally important is the use of geophysical techniques to help us identify possible unseen geohazards. The data from these scientific investigations should contribute to communities' awareness of potential hazards, and this scientific data must be used when these communities craft their appropriate disaster preparedness programs. So with this, I wish to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Carla. As we now open our digital platform for discussions, may I call on Ms. Crystal Todcor, Program Officer of the Excellence Awards Unit, to facilitate in the open forum. Hi, Tal.
Thank you, Reggie. Hi, Ma'am Carla. Good morning, everyone. So, may I request everyone to revisit your notes, the questions you have in mind, any clarifications, um, or even insights that you want to share. So for our Zoom participants, type your questions in the Q&A box. And for our FB Live viewers, you may type your question in the comments box. Make sure that you include your name and your organization so as to be recognized. So we would like to invite our participants to ask questions. And let me start with the first question. This is from Nathan Parcotella from UP. His question for Ma'am Carla is, are these geophysical methods now accessible outside the academe? For instance, do various agencies mandated to mitigate hazards have access to the knowledge and equipment for these techniques? Were there any effort from the academe to bring these very useful techniques to these agencies?
Okay, thank you very much. So those are very interesting questions. So mandated agencies have really worked to acquire this geophysical equipment. So I know for a fact that the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology have several geophysical equipment at their disposal. The same thing is true for the Mines and Geosciences Bureau, both in the central office and as well as in the regional offices. So for us in the academe, what we do is to partner with the geologists in these government agencies and help provide the training that their geologists and technical staff may need in order to familiarize themselves in the use, the acquisition of geophysical data, as well as in the processing and interpretation of geophysical data, which, as I said, is not as simple as um, uh, directly looking for the features that you expect to see in the subsurface. So it requires a combined knowledge of geology and geophysics to make sense of the geophysical measurements. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Carla. We have another question. The whole of society approach on DRRM takes into consideration all hazards, including biological risks. Given the government's measure of readiness for the occurrence of natural disasters such as earthquakes, what is your take on how the Philippine government has responded to this pandemic so far?
Well, those are different things. So the mandated agencies in the Philippines, especially for disaster risk reduction and preparedness like FIVOLS and MGB, have taken great strides in improving their efforts, not only in understanding what hazards are present, but in communicating these hazards to the communities as well, because the critical factor in disaster response is how communities react to the information that is given to them. So, of course, it's very challenging during this time because it's the first time that we have um, a pandemic. And knock on wood, we hope that we don't experience a disastrous event during these very serious times of the pandemic, because it's difficult to assess how we can react appropriately when we have to observe physical distancing to minimize the possible transmission of the virus. So this is a very unique case of having a pandemic and maybe reacting to a potential disastrous event.
Yes. So how about let's say for the earthquakes? How ready are we for the 7.2 magnitude earthquake?
Well, the FIVOX has taken a lot of efforts in relaying to people, in relaying to communities what they need to know about earthquakes. Even during this time of pandemic, I saw that there was an earthquake drill that was carried out so that people will know what to do in a pandemic if, knock on wood, an earthquake happens. So there's really been a lot of effort in making in increasing people's awareness of these various hazards. And as I said, technology has been very useful because FIVOX has come up with that fault finder map. So if you live in Quezon City, you can look at this website and see if your place is near a fault, if it's near an active fault. Therefore, you're very aware of what potential hazards your area may experience.
All right. Thank you, Ma'am Carla. We have last two questions. This is from an anonymous attendee. So given the importance that you presented earlier, geophysics is a really promising field for the Philippines. Do you think that we have enough pool of geophysicists in the country?
Unfortunately, we don't have a large number of people specializing in geophysics. Although we have seen an increase in students taking geology as a course, the majority of these geologists, when they graduate, sort of veer away from geophysics. I don't know if it's the equations that they're afraid of, but as mentioned, it is an important specialization, and it will really help us if we have more people specializing in geophysics. So this platform is very useful because it will help us introduce the field of geophysics to our young students and hopefully encourage them to go into the discipline. Thank you.
All right, relating to that, this is the last question. What would it take to become a geophysicist?
Well, our undergraduate course is still geology. And then when we do further studies, that's when we specialize in geophysics. The hardcore geophysics requires a lot of understanding and patience for mathematics, and physics. But the more exploration or application of geophysics just really requires your understanding of geophysics and your knowledge of geology, and you have to have these two marry so that you're able to come up with an appropriate interpretation of your geophysical data.
All right. So thank you very much, Ma'am Carla. We have more questions here, but we only have 10 minutes. However, later during the second part of the open forum, we will give time for more questions to be asked. So thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Carla. We shall now proceed to the next part of our Metrobank Foundation Fellowship in Public Service conversations. To introduce our next presenter, let us watch this video.
Anong nadama mo makita mo si Gracia?
Utang ko siya ng kanya. Utang kong buhay ko sa father niya. Kaya minabuti ko siya, natulungan din siya. Kasi kung hindi dahil sa father niya sir, patay na ako sir. Sa akin na sir, sir, God works in mysterious ways. Sa bawat taon sir na na-extend yung life ko, may mga nire-reveal sa akin sir na binuhay kita dahil that is one of your purpose. Kasi nung iniwan ko sa sir ng 15 years ago sir, dahil na-reassign yung unit namin, nagtuloy-tuloy ako contact sa mga leaders dito sir, kasi alam ko sir, hindi pa kami tapos dito. Marami pang dapat gawin dito sir. Do not withhold good to those who need it if it is in your capacity to do it. Natutunan ko talaga dito sir, bilang isang sundalo, kung kaya mong tumulong sa kapwa mo, huwag mong pigilan sarili mong tumulong. Kahit na hindi sundalo sir, kahit na simpleng Pilipino ka lang, gawin mo hanggat kaya mong tumulong, lalong-lalo na kapag kailangan ng tao na yan tumulong. Sir yung usapan. Tinaya nilang buhay nila para sa amin. Tinaya namin yung buhay namin para sa kanila. Paakyat dito sir, sir yung gusto kong maiyak. Nakita ko ng dami ng bahay. Kita ko yung mga bata. Yun pala yung result ng pagpupursige namin dati. Buhay ko, buhay ng mga kasamahan ko. Karir ko, karir ng mga kasamahan ko sir. Tinaya namin. Hindi namin nakita ito sir na ito yung maging resulta niya balang araw. Or part to sir ng destiny ko or calling ko bilang isang sundalo. Sa totoo lang sir, hindi ko alam sir kung saan papunta to. What I'm more interested sir is i-continue ko na gawin yung purpose na binigay ng Panginoon sa akin sir. Binigyan niya ako ng pangalawang buhay, binigyan niya ako ng opportunity na to. And all I have to do sir is continue sir yung will ng Panginoon sa buhay ko. Yung sitwasyon na to sir, hindi to aksidente. Kaya every moment sir na binigay sa akin, alam ko na God-ordained moment. Kaya I always stand up to the challenge.
At this point, we shall now confer also the Metrobank Foundation Fellow in Public Service title to Lieutenant Colonel John Paul Baldomar. Allow me to read the citation. Metrobank Foundation confers the Metrobank Foundation Fellow in Public Service to Lieutenant Colonel John Paul Baldomar of the Philippine Army, Chief of the current Operations Branch, Internal Security Operations Division, J3, Armed Forces of the Philippines. As 2019 Metrobank Foundation Outstanding Filipino, recognized for initiating development projects that help remote families to become empowered and self-sufficient communities in Maguindanao. His direct supervision and involvement include key roles during the Mount Mayon and Taal eruptions, humanitarian efforts in the Marawi crisis, and recently as the AFP's point person for COVID-19 response during the earlier months of the pandemic. Given this 13th of October 2020 at the Metrobank Plaza, Makati City. Okay, sir. Now, may I invite Lieutenant Colonel John Paul Baldomar to deliver his presentation with the title, The Role of the Military During Humanitarian Emergencies. Morning, sir.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Before I start, I would like to update the position that Sir Reggie has mentioned a while ago. I am the former chief of the current operations branch of OJ3 because right now I am already undergoing my command and general staff course with the AFP Command and General Staff School. So my topic for this morning is also connected with what Dr. Carla has shared earlier. It's about the role of the military or the AFP in humanitarian emergencies. So Dr. Carla has mentioned earlier about geological hazards composed of volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and tsunamis. So we have a lot of that here in the Philippines. But aside from that, other natural hazards that we also face in the Philippines are hydrometeorological hazards such as typhoons, floods, monsoon rain, storm surges, and droughts. These hazards, like what they call in the humanitarian community, Philippines is the 7-Eleven of natural disasters. You name it, the Philippines have it. Aside from this, aside from geological hazards and hydrometeorological hazards, we also have biological hazards as one of these under the natural hazards. This is composed of disease outbreaks or a plant or animal contagion. Wherein recently we are experiencing a disease outbreak which is called COVID-19 pandemic. Under the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management concept, in order to address these hazards, especially the natural hazards, NDRMC or the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council was created under Republic Act 10121. It strengthens the national disaster risk and reduction and management capability of the country. So it was called the RA 10121 was called the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010. The whole structure of the NDRMC or the council is chaired by the Secretary of National Defense. It has 4 clusters led by different cabinet secretaries. And it has a total of 36 agencies, government organizations, and private and non-government organizations to complete the full structure of the council. So we might ask, where does the AFP, since our topic today is about the role of the armed forces in humanitarian assistance, where does the AFP falls under this structure? So the AFP actually fall under the disaster response cluster as the lead agency in search, rescue, and retrieval operations. We also support the logistics and law and order clusters by providing transportation and personnel augmentation to the Philippine National Police. So let's discuss further what's the actual role of the AFP in humanitarian emergencies. Let's use the UN model in the role of militaries in humanitarian emergencies called the cookie, truck, and bridge model. Cookie means direct assistance. This is the activities wherein soldiers are directly engaged with the affected community. Soldiers are giving food, aids, giving medical assistance to the community. While indirect assistance are the support that the military are giving, such as transportation, security, and other support. While the bridge model is the infrastructure support that the military gives, such as emergency construction of facilities to support the survivors, clearing of roads, and putting up of electrical or communication system in the community. Under the United Nations framework, the use of foreign military assets is always considered as an option of last resort. As much as possible, they will not use military assets because they are trying to protect the humanitarian principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. So they don't want to put color on their response, especially if in the area where the disaster happened, there are other armed actors that are present in the area aside from the military. But in the context of the Philippines, the military is also always considered as a first responder. It is more of a auxiliary and the first persons or first organization to arrive at the ground. Since we have talked about the United Nations, let's use the definition of United Nations on civil-military coordination. According to the United Nations, it is the essential dialogue and interaction between civilian and military actors in humanitarian emergencies that is necessary to protect prompt humanitarian principles, avoid competition, minimize inconsistency, and when appropriate, pursue common goals. I would like to highlight some points on this. First is, it is an essential dialogue and interaction. It is not a center. It is not a physical structure, but rather a platform. Second, it protect and promote humanitarian principles, avoid competition, minimize inconsistency, and as much as possible, it pursue common goals. So for a humanitarian, the common goal always is to lessen suffering and save lives. So as much as possible, military efforts and civilian efforts must be coordinated in order to pursue these goals. Here in the Philippines, the concept is the AFP will provide the resources, the assets, the personnel, while OCD or NDRMC will decide on the prioritization where this asset goes and what logistics will be first transported. So during emergencies, the role of the military actually is, of the AFP in particular, is first, according to law, to conduct search and rescue and retrieval. And another role the AFP has is to support the Office of the Civil Defense through logistics and transportation, support. We all know that during disasters, the AFP asset is always the backbone of the logistical and transportation requirements of humanitarian agencies. We also have, the AFP also gives medical support by augmenting medical doctors, nurses, and medical practitioners. We also give, the AFP also provides security assistance, especially to the AFP, to the PNP, to maintain law and order, and also engineer and communication support. We provide this, especially if the agency, the government agency that is in charge of this, such as road clearing, restoration of electricity, restoration of communication, if these agencies haven't yet functioned normally, so the military will step in order to ensure that these services are restored. And lastly, we also provide manpower assistance. That is one of the assets of the military, wherein our organization is heavy on manpower. Please don't get me wrong on this, because these services can also be provided by civilian organizations. The only difference between civilian organization and the military on this case is usually the military is the first one to arrive in the ground because of the structure of the military, because of the nature of the job of the military, and because the military has its own assets. So with this in mind, with this role, we might ask, what are the plans that the military and other agency follow in the conduct of disaster response? For hydrometeorological hazards, we use the National Disaster Response Plan published by the Office of the Civil Defense in 2016. For geological hazards, we use the plan for earthquake and tsunamis. So this is a all hazard preparedness plan. But earlier we discussed that natural hazards also is composed of biological hazard. So what is the plan? When COVID-19 started to threaten our country this year, early this year, we found out. So the first case that we have is on January 30 with the woman from Wuhan, China. That is the first confirmed case in the country. And the first confirmed local transmission was on March 7, 2020. And it was only that time that we realized that we don't have a ready pandemic preparedness plan that is susceptible or is appropriate for this kind of situation, that is appropriate for COVID-19. So what we might ask, how come did this happen? Let me be clear on this. This is not the first time our country experienced pandemic, the threat of pandemic. We have experienced the threat of the avian flu, H1N1 virus, the MERS-CoV, SARS-CoV years ago. We already experienced them, but the effect to our country of those disease is not that much that we took it for granted to prepare more. Unlike our neighboring countries such as South Korea, Japan, Thailand, Taiwan, Singapore, Vietnam, wherein the effect of those diseases before to their country are massive. And that's why they took it seriously and come up with their own plans on how to respond to a pandemic. Going back to what we were talking before, we found out ourselves that we are not ready because we don't have the plan for this type of threat or pandemic threat. So what we did is we figured out that we will address this pandemic as a humanitarian emergency, as what other countries did. In order for them to have a platform or a structure on how to address this, they considered pandemic as a humanitarian emergency and use the structure of disaster response in their country to to address pandemic. So with the Philippine COVID-19 response, we had the IATF. Actually, the IATF is the only preparedness we had in terms of pandemic response, because this was actually conceptualized in 2014 under Executive Order 168, which was signed by the then President Benigno Aquino III in 2014. And this year, for COVID-19 response, it was again activated in January of 2020 by President Rodrigo Duterte as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Under the IATF, we have the NTF, or the National Task Force COVID-19. The National Task Force is the one in charge of the day-to-day, the operational matters of the response. It was created on March 24, 2020. If we will take note of the time, it is 17 days after the first local transmission was recorded in our country. For the tactical level, we have initially activated three task groups. But through time, we found out that we need more task groups to address other concerns. So we added two, the food security and then the management of returning overseas Filipinos. And for the regional level, we have the regional task forces headed by the director of the regional OCD, or Office of Civil Defense in the region, and the provincial, municipal, city, and barangay task forces are led by their respective LGUs, or local government units. So we may ask again, where does AFP fall under this? Actually, the Armed Forces of the Philippines directly supports three task forces, aside from the support that we have on the regional task forces. So we support the response operations, the resource management and logistics, and the strategic communication. So again, going back to the plan, in order to address COVID-19 pandemic, the government came up with a plan called the National Action Plan against COVID-19. Actually, this plan has three series already. The first one is National Action Plan 1. Then we have the National Action Plan 2. Actually, National Action Plan 1 ended on June 30. Then National Action Plan 2 started on July 1 until September 30. And right now we are already under National Action Plan 3. So what are the roles of the military specifically in the context of COVID-19 response? So let's use again the cookie truck bridge model. For the direct assistance, we have the medical support. The Armed Forces of the Philippines augments the Department of Health by providing doctors, nurses, and medical practitioners in manning isolation and quarantine facilities and even hospitals. We also provide indirect assistance through the public safety and security by supporting the PNP and maintaining law and order, by conducting checkpoints, and we also provide logistical and transport assistance by transporting medical supplies coming from other countries and then distributing it within our country. So the AFP was the backbone of the transportation requirements of the task force after all of the commercial transportation were suspended. We also provide, the AFP also provide manpower assistance in the task groups, in the incident commands. We provide personnel to man those task groups in order to ensure that it functions 24/7. And we also provide communication support if the current communication requirements is not being met by the civilian providers. And we also, and the AFP also gave infrastructure support to the task force through the emergency construction of isolation and quarantine facilities. We might ask why? Why utilize the AFP? This is supposed to be a health problem. Why utilize the AFP? Well, pandemic is not only a health problem. It is more becoming of a national threat to our national security. And the AFP was utilized first and foremost because of the structure of the AFP. The structure wherein the unity of command is always clear. We have the leadership that if our leaders gave the order, we have to follow, regardless of the threat or the risk that we face. And the AFP can respond anytime and in any condition because we have our own assets to transport our troops, and we have our own resources to support our troops. And the AFP structure is deployed nationwide. So anywhere, in any situation, in any time, the AFP can send troops in the soonest possible time. The AFP also have the resources. We have the strategic lift assets, the naval vessels. We have the C-130s and C-295 aircrafts that can lift heavy equipments and heavy supplies from one point to another. And we have the manpower, and we are self-supporting. Usually the AFP can move even without support coming from other agencies. And most especially the AFP's commitment is at the forefront of this situation. The AFP is committed to serve as a professional soldier because it is our duty to serve the country and the Filipino people. We do not complain, we first obey, and sometimes it doesn't even come to the point that we complain, we just obey. And we trust our superiors that they are doing the best judgment for the organization. Above all this, the AFP also faces challenges. First, we face a shift of focus in our mission. So it also comes at a cost for the AFP. The AFP is in charge of the internal security operations and territorial defense of the country. And when pandemic happened, there was a shift of focus wherein the order was given to first focus on addressing the pandemic. And next is we also have limitations in our strategic assets and capabilities. We have the assets, but with the requirements that is presented to us, sometimes it's not enough. And most especially soldiers can also be affected. Little that anyone know that soldiers were also hospitalized because of COVID-19. Soldiers also died because of COVID-19. But we accept it as part and parcel of our duty as a soldier. So I would like also to look at this situation, the COVID-19 pandemic and the disaster response or natural disasters as an opportunity for us to learn. First, on the AFP level, we always consider this as an opportunity to improve our readiness of our strategic lift assets, readiness of our personnel, and to strengthen our health services because we notice and we realize that we have our gaps and limitations. It's also an opportunity for us to improve the competency of our soldiers through training, letting them learn new things and new competencies that was not learned before this situation happened. And it is also an opportunity for us to improve our interagency coordination by the conduct of joint training and exercises with other agencies, especially in the context of pandemic, and also to enhance the civil-military coordination platform, again, in the context of pandemic, because it's not yet conceptualized. And on the national level, I hope our national leaders will also take this as an opportunity for us to enhance our pandemic response coordination and structures by having our own national pandemic response plan. Yes, we have the national action plans right now that we use, but this plan is specifically made or tailored for COVID-19. So we have to act on this and come up with a generic plan that can address any pandemic situation in the country. And we also have to capacitate our local government units that they too can respond on their own when there is a disease outbreak on their locality. And the creation of a national level pandemic response agency. So we have the IATF. The problem with the IATF is when there is no pandemic, there's no preparation for the pandemic response. But having a national level pandemic response agency, with or without pandemic, we have to prepare for any eventualities. And lastly, the conduct of a regular national disaster consultative meeting by bringing in different actors from different walks of life, from different sectors, to talk together, sit down, talk together. What do we have to prepare as a nation in order to face future disasters and pandemics? That's all for my lecture, for what I have to share. Thank you very much and good morning.
Yes, thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Baldomar. So for now, moving to the open forum, may I request everyone to revisit again your notes, the questions you have in mind, clarifications, comments, or insights that you might want to share, as we now open the floor again for discussions. Siguro, Sir JP, to start off, I have my own question. When it comes to disaster response or preparedness, is the use of the military a last resort or an inevitable trend?
Yeah, the use of military as a last resort or an inevitable trend, right? I would say, in my own opinion, it would depend. It would depend upon the region where we at. Because if we consider countries that are far off when it comes to their preparedness to disaster response, wherein they have their own civil defense assets, they have their own assets to conduct disaster response. They don't rely on the military at all. So I would say that it would rather be more of the use of the military would be more of a option of last resort. But in areas wherein or countries wherein the military is plays a critical role in the disaster response, such as the Philippines, ASEAN countries, Asian countries, we will see in these countries that when there is disaster, it is always the face of the military that they see to be responding first. It will always be the face of the military, where the people will see that transport goods, gives health to the locality, because in these countries, it is only the military that has this type of structure that is organized and has this type of assets. So my answer to that is it will depend upon the context of the country that was affected by disaster.
I see, sir. That's a good question. Good answer for that, sir. We have one question pa, Sir JP, from our Zoom. So 1 second, sir. This is from Raymart Trivilla from Negros Oriental State University. His question is, those students who are AFP reservists, are they qualified to join urgent calamity response?
Reservist, right? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
First and foremost, we have to remember that when we when we mobilize reservists, it is only upon the direction of the president. But when we use reservists in a local context, example, if the disaster happened in Negros Oriental and the reservist units is based in Negros Oriental, then they can be utilized only within their locality. They cannot go out their locality, because if they go out of their locality, it would be a violation of the law or the policies that govern over reservists. So they, as long as they have to act as a unit and not individually. So they must be organized. Their commander of their RCDC must be the one giving them direction on what to do and where to deploy.
I see, sir. Good answer, sir. Sir JP, we also have, i-mention ko lang dito sa chat box. There's one who says, I fully agree to the statement of Lieutenant Colonel John Paul. When Bohol was hit with the 7.2 magnitude earthquake in 2013, the AFP were one of our very valuable frontliners. They have helped Bohol so much in terms of rescue and response, retrieval, provision of air and land transportation for the relief operations, and many more. Even during peacetime, the military personnel are there for the province of Bohol. Our salute to them. This is from, one second, sir, from Jovencia G. I'll send you the link, sir. Anyway, we have one more question, sir. This is from the executive director of the League of Corporate Foundations, Ms. Helen Orande. So she says, Helen of LCF, do you conduct debriefing after every humanitarian assistance for those who were involved in the operation and also personal experience during the humanitarian assistance?
Yes, yes, ma'am. We do. Although hopefully because most of the time we are also overtaken by events, because before we can even reorganize, there is another event that is happening that we have to react. But based on our policy and based on our guidelines, we have to conduct debriefing, and have to conduct even not only in disasters but also in armed conflicts, counseling, trauma counseling, in order to reassess the psychological state of our troops, because these are the frontliners, and their psychological state and emotional state is very, very important.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Sir JP.
But although currently the capacity of the armed forces to conduct debriefing and counseling to our troops are only limited. That's why we are also focusing on improving our services and our competency on this area.
Thank you, Sir JP. We have one more question, sir.
Yes, sir.
Before we from Dera. It says, is there a certain level of emergency before the AFP is area before AFP is involved? Did you sorry, were able to hear the question, sir?
Only the last part, sir. Is there a level of emergency?
Hello, sir. Oh, sorry, sir. Okay. I'll repeat it po, sir. Pasensya pa. Is there a level of emergency before the AFP is deployed? And what are the criteria before the AFP is involved?
First and foremost, sir, if an emergency happen or a disaster happen, the first responder actually is the localities, the responders, the community in that area, the LGU, and even the military in that area, the local military that is deployed in that the military that is deployed in that area. If this emergency at that point, the military is already involved, but their requirements is not yet being forwarded to the national level, because at the local level we already have our local we have the provincial, regional, or the municipal or city disaster risk reduction and management council. So if they can address it at their own level, they will address it. If they cannot address it at their own level, then it will be elevated to the next higher level, and knocking on wood, that it will be addressed, it will be elevated to a national concern. So at the lowest level of let's say city or municipal, the military can already be a part of the response if requested by the local government units.
I see. So it's based on the local government's request for assistance. But if they can handle it themselves first, they will request it later on. So kailangan na pa. I see. Sir, thank you, Sir JP. We appreciate all the details in terms of your answers. But for now, at this juncture, we are inviting Dr. Carla Dimalanta to join us in the open forum. Please type in again in the question and answer box for Zoom participants and in the comment section for the Facebook Live viewers. Okay. 1 second.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So Dr. Carla and Sir JP, we have one question for both of you. I think you have already answered this, but maybe if you have additional recommendations, then we also would like to hear it. So given your topics and also the sectors that you are working in, do you have any more policy recommendations that will help our country with regards to disasters and disaster management?
Policy recommendations, we're currently in the thick of budget for various agencies and departments. And it's sad to note, there was one question actually in the chat, in the Q&A portion. It's very sad to note that agencies agencies like the Department of Science and Technology and the FIVOGs have been subjected to budget cuts. So agencies like this are tasked with monitoring, providing warnings, providing alerts for various disastrous events. It's unfortunate that we hear of these things. So government support should be directed towards agencies like this. The academe needs government support in order to produce the scientists, the geologists, geophysicists, which this country needs. So additional support for science, technology, research and development in the country is very crucial for a country like the Philippines.
Thank you, Ma'am Carla. Sir JP?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Maybe policy recommendation, not more on natural disasters, because only more on pandemic response, because the hydrometeorological hazard and the geological hazards are being taken care of by NDRMC, the policies that are needed on that one. But I am more concerned on the pandemic response that we have. If I were to recommend, I would like to recommend what I shared before on my last slide. For the national government to come up with the national preparedness plan, not only for COVID-19, because COVID-19 could be different for the next pandemic, knocking on wood. But at least we must be prepared. We already have the lessons from other countries. Taiwan is seen to be the most effective country to have addressed COVID-19, not because they are rich or because they're very good at it, because they are prepared. They have their plans. So if we will have our own national pandemic response plan, the structures, the necessary agencies, the necessary equipment, the necessary policies will come with it if we have it. Because we cannot do anything. We are just limited if we don't have a plan. So I would suggest that we first have a plan. And from that plan, from there, we will have our structures. We will have our facilities. We will have our we will have our equipments that we need in the pandemic response.
All right. Thank you, Sir JP, for that question. We have someone from the audience who is raising his hand. Mr. Joseph Brian Mape, are you there? Right. So while waiting for him, we have one question from Miss Maria Lea Barrios. I think this is for both of you. Given the pandemic situation, is there a need to pass a law relating to pandemic or any forms of biological hazard? May I ask Ma'am Carla to answer first?
I think, as mentioned by Colonel JP, we already have some structure in place. So I guess just adding the biological hazard or the pandemic is another component that will have to be addressed by the disaster structure.
All right. Thank you. Sir JP?
Yeah. I heard about the proposal of Representative Joey Salceda for the creation of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. That's House Bill number 6096. Yeah. I haven't read the provision of the proposal, but yes, it would be helpful as long as said proposal will be closely coordinated or planned with the functions of NDRMC, because what we're trying to avoid here is another white elephant, another structure, another organization that is just a duplication of an existing structure that we have. So I cannot say that's a good law, but yes, having a center that will look into pandemic response and pandemic threat is important, but we have to check on the possibility that it could be a duplication of effort.
All right. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Baldomar. I think Mr. Joseph Brian Mape is all right now. Are you ready, Sir Mr. Mape, to ask your question?
Yun po. Hello po.
Hi.
Ask ko lang po si Lieutenant po kung may i-admit po ba ng Army yung mga scientists to their ranks and be treated similar to engineers po?
Yes, I believe so. Currently, the Philippine Army is in need of not only scientists, but those who have degree in biology, chemical engineering, and similar studies. The Philippine Army is in need of those scientists and specialists because of the current situation, that we realize that we have to grow. We have to grow as an organization because we found out, we realized our gaps with COVID-19, and we took the opportunity to grow, to learn. That's why we wanted to recruit more of these kinds of of person who have knowledge on these fields, because we wanted to use them to further develop our army and the armed forces of the Philippines. And if you are interested, I maybe I can help you link to that because I believe the armed forces is on a massive recruitment for this specialization. Answer your question, Joseph?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So thank you for that question. Now we have another one who is raising his hand, Colonel Erickson Rosana. Colonel?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, I'm Colonel Rosana from OJ7. So this is just actually suggestions on the what can be we do or a proposal. Maybe one is we can be an advocate for maybe a policy reform to build an national or institutional actually resiliency. So this actually suggested by Congressman Loren Legarda, because I observed that our responses are more on the HADR or only on response operations. We remember that the DRRM has four phases or four what do you call that? We have the preventive and mitigation, preparedness,
clusters and
response,
clusters.
Response and rehabilitation and reconstruction. So we are only maybe expert in one, in the response operations, but we need to, of course, develop our programs and activities in the three clusters of the DRRM. And the other one is these DRRM measures are not linked to the climate change adaptation and mitigation. So there has to be a national agency to build this resilience. Na these DRRM measures, the climate change adaptation and mitigation, and of course the national security can be linked, so that our response to any disaster before, during, and after is maybe a comprehensive one, or maybe a comprehensive one. And another one is I second the suggestion of Dr. Carla that we have also to advocate for the additional funding and support to DRRM, not only DRRM, but the climate change adaptation and mitigation also, for government agencies that involve and maybe extended to non-government organization, or maybe research or development institution that helping the government, like what the lecturer, Dr. Carla Dimalanta. That's all. Thank you.
Sir. Thank you, sir. I cannot agree more. You're right, sir. You're right with that. Mitigation, prevention, and resiliency is as important as the response itself. Just like what we saw, we showed earlier, that the structure of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council is composed of four clusters, and these four clusters are important, and we can be more prepared if these four clusters are being addressed equally.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you for that, Colonel Erickson Rosana. We have one for Dr. Dimalanta. This is from Police Captain Noel Caballi. Yes. Hello, Dr. Dimalanta. How would the academe help the government to inspire students to take up geophysics studies and to strengthen the numbers of our geophysicists in the country? Earlier, you said that some students take up this course, but eventually they ceased to continue the course. How would the government inspire these students so that they will continue and graduate?
Well, actually, the Academe, in partnership with organizations like Metrobank Foundation, by providing venues like this, help us popularize the discipline of geophysics, because there's not a lot of people who are aware of this discipline or specialization. So we should continue having this type of fora, introduce students to the field of geophysics, make them aware of geophysics as a potential career path for them. Like I said, maybe it just scares off some geology students because of the physics and the math that is involved. But there are those who are fanatics of math and physics who should really consider going into geophysics because of all the applications and all the need that we have for geophysicists in the country.
All right, thank you, Dr. Carla. So before we end, may I just read this comment from Mr. Juanito Merle. Incidentally, Mr. Juanito Merle is one of our awardees in Metrobank. So he said the conversations on disaster management is very informative. This may be cascaded to the grassroots level for us to work as one for the betterment of our country. I have this idea since there are messages circulated in the social media that actually heighten Filipinos' anxiety. So thank you, Mr. Juanito Merle, for that comment. Now we have more questions. However, we have time constraints, so I will, for those who have questions but are not answered live, we will be asking Dr. Carla Dimalanta and Lieutenant Colonel Baldomar to answer this privately. So thank you everyone for this insightful discussion. Reggie, back to you.
Yes, there you go. Again, thank you, sirs and madams, for all your questions. Thank you, Dr. Dimalanta and Lieutenant Colonel Baldomar. The discussion has been most insightful. I'm sure everyone has enjoyed this and probably has more questions for you. But anyway, to give the closing statement is Metrobank Foundation Executive Director Nicanor L. Torres Jr. May I also request everyone to stay as we will immediately have our souvenir photo opportunity after the message.
Good day. Thank you to everyone who graced the kick-off conversation. And to our two speakers who shared their expertise with us this morning. It's a daily reality we live with that no country is ever spared from any kind of disaster. We are all vulnerable. However, one truth that can we find comfort with is that we have the capacity to respond as individual and as citizen belonging to a community. Dr. Carla Dimalanta's presentation underscored that everyone is connected when it comes to disaster management. When one mentions geophysics, we might be inclined to think that it exclusively concerns scientists. What she revealed was that the principles of geophysics apply to every Filipino's everyday life. This discipline enables her and her colleagues to identify risks and vulnerability of regions and provinces. This in turn empowers them to equip other institutions and localities to develop measures to minimize a disaster's impact. More than seeing and understanding what is beneath the Earth's surface, geophysics is crucial in managing geohazards. It helps policymakers form a research-based approach in developing disaster preparedness and risk reduction programs. It is then right to say that information provided by geophysics, when wielded properly, can save lives. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel John Paul Baldomar shed light on the role of the military in the effective response to disasters. We often see soldiers in the middle of the action. Even now, we find our uniformed men and women in the front lines in the combat against the COVID-19 pandemic. With over 2 decades in service, Lieutenant Colonel John Paul Baldomar is no stranger to humanitarian emergencies. Sharing his expertise gave us a glimpse of how mobilization enables them to respond to the immediate needs of communities. He also revealed how we, as civilians, can aid them to maximize the impact of their efforts. Our two speakers might come from different backgrounds and specialize in different fields, but the information they presented equally point out that every Filipino plays a role in building a disaster-resilient nation. In closing, on behalf of Metrobank Foundation, let me again express my sincerest gratitude to Dr. Carla Dimalanta and Lieutenant Colonel Baldomar for sharing their time and lending their expertise. I would also like to thank all participants for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. In the first ever virtual conversation, it is my hope that the insights our speakers imparted will equip us as we strive to help our communities prepare for and bounce back from the challenges we face. Maraming salamat po and stay safe everyone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Torres. Now, again, may I now invite all the panelists, to be clear, all the panelists to open access to their webcams for the photo opportunity. Yes, may I invite all the panelists, please? Thank you.
Join kayo, hero. All the rest that here are here.
Okay. Yes, sir. The screenshot, the photo has been taken, sir.
For yung meron pang ibang kasama dito sa akin. Wala na, okay lang. The 6 of us lang. 7.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so first of all, Carla and JP, I like to congratulate you and thank you. Please open your speaker. Yan. So, how do you feel now, Carla? Finally.
I finally finished. Thank you very much, sir, for this opportunity. So I really appreciate being given this platform to share my discipline.
Yeah, ang ganda ng mga sinabi ninyo. And kitang-kita ko yung value na generate even in a short period. Sana nga yung maraming ma-entice to go into geophysics, no?
Yes.
Yan. And kay JP naman, JP parang ang alam ko yung shinare mo pero the way you presented it's very relevant, no? Dahil you added that humanitarian emergency. Yan. Very good.
Hi, sir.
Sir
Chito. Yes.
Sir Chito, we'll just conclude the program first.
Okay,
before,
sure.
Yes, sir. Before we go with yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Babalik na lang. Sorry.
Yes. Balik lang. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Everyone okay? Okay. So yes, after that for photo opportunity, that concludes our program for today. Again, I would like to give a few reminders. Kindly answer the feedback survey, as those who have answered the survey will be given a certificate. And for more updates about the Metrobank Foundation Fellowship in Public Service Conversations and our other programs, visit our website at mbfoundation.org.ph. Also, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Metrobank Foundation. They're both connected. And on Twitter at Metrobank Found without the ER. Again, it has been my pleasure to serve as your host. Thank you. Stay safe and God bless.